With Jaland Lowe out with a shoulder injury, who exactly should be PG1 for the Wildcats? Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious, and I think the answer is pretty exclusive to just one guy.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to be talking about who exactly is going to be point guard one with Jaland Lowe out. That's right, Lowe suffered a shoulder injury in Kentucky's blue and white game. Now the Wildcats are trying to find an answer as to who will be the initiator of the offense, basically. While there are, I think, a various number of answers that Kentucky and head coach Mark Pope will give to this, I think the guy that runs this thing should be pretty exclusive to just one dude. We'll talk about that on today's episode, as well as Andrija Jelavic's role in this offense. Pretty rigid, actually, according to Coach Pope. And then to wrap up the show, I'm going to give my thoughts on the Kentucky coach situation with Stoops, and if Kentucky wants to get in on Jon Sumrall, I think they need to do it quicker than the cycle currently is allowing them to. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I would love it if you subscribe to the show. Then if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. So I think that Denzel Aberdeen needs to be Kentucky's point guard. And frankly, I think he needs to be the primary and basically only option that Kentucky trots out on Friday against the Purdue Boilermakers. Yes, I understand that whenever Mark Pope was asked about this earlier today, whenever he was asked, who's going to take over? And he gave a litany of answers. It's Denzel Aberdeen, Jasper Johnson, Colin Chandler. The bigs are going to get involved in the offense. Everybody's going to be passing and distributing with Jaland Lowe out. Cool. Whatever. Awesome. I think that in order for this offense to reach its full potential with Lowe out in these exhibition games or maybe even early season games before the Louisville contest, Kentucky needs to have Denzel Aberdeen running the show the majority of the time. Again, I understand that the bigs are going to get involved in this. The way that Kentucky likes to do their zoom action, the forwards are going to get involved in this. Obviously, other guys are going to put up assist numbers and they're going to distribute. No duh. But who fills the Jaland Lowe role? It has to be Denzel Aberdeen because of what the other players in your backcourt give you. I think they are stronger off ball than maybe Denzel Aberdeen would in this certain specific circumstance. I understand what we had, the conversation that we had earlier this offseason about Aberdeen, about how I think he will thrive in a more spot-up catch-and-shoot off-ball type role. He's not going to be doing as much dribbling. He's not going to be doing as much shooting off the dribble. And while I think that's still going to be true for the majority of the year, guess what? Already, before the season even starts, your top option at point guard is out. So you have to make adjustments. And I think that Aberdeen here is the guy that you can put at point guard and the rest of the offense still kind of function and be okay. Because Jasper, as good as I think Jasper can be in the future, kind of diversifying his offensive attack and his current state. This was true whenever we watched him with Team USA. This is true whenever we watched him in high school. And this is true right now, I think, with the way that this team is going to operate. He will be best. He will be best for Kentucky in an off-ball, catch-and-shoot, transition scoring type of role. That's where you're going to see Jasper make the most hay, is by being somebody that Kentucky can rely on off of the ball in transition. That is where I think Jasper will thrive. Even in the half court, I think that Jasper's probably going to end up being a better option for you on the wing, coming off of screens, cutting to the basket. I think you're going to see him thrive in that role as opposed to Aberdeen. I think that Jasper will just be better suited for that because I think he's going to, at the end of the day, if both these guys are putting shots up, I think Jasper's going to end up being a more efficient guy, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to maintain efficiency while your offensive engine is not on the floor. Almost definitively, Jasper's better off ball. Does that mean Jasper's not going to have the ball in his hands at different points? Again, no, but I really do think in order to maintain consistency, he's not going to. I honestly would rather have Denzel, then Colin Chandler, and then Jasper Johnson, just because of how dangerous Jasper is shooting, again, in catch and shoot situations. It also needs to be noted here that Aberdeen, when asked to start, when asked to step up and play a larger role for Florida in 5 starts last year, averaged over 14 points per game, shot over 40% from 3, super efficient, high scoring, really gave you everything you wanted out of a backup guard with a lot of experience. Here he is now, already before the season even starts, kind of being asked to step into that role. Oh, by the way, against the number 1 team in the country this Friday. And I understand that game does not count for anything, but it's going to matter a lot to Big Blue Nation, especially if that thing goes south early. So Aberdeen, I think, here's the clear choice. I would rather have Colin Chandler because of what I trust with him, I think, with the ball in his hands, and then Jasper because I really like the thought of Jasper on the wing, again, either stationary catch and shoot stuff or coming off of screens to pop things out. I really do think Jasper can be that dangerous shooting, I should say. So it's all about maximizing your strengths while Jaland Lowe is still out. I also find it interesting that there have been some people saying, well, maybe Ortega could, initiate a little bit of the offense. And I think that's less about initiating the offense and more about, give me a high ball screen and let me run to the hoop kind of thing, and nobody's going to stop me from scoring type thing. So I don't necessarily know if that's what we're talking about here when we come to initiating offense. It's not like the ball handling and the passing that we're looking at here in terms of what a point guard actually is, even in this system. So I think that Aberdeen will give you more passing strength, will give you more ball handling, maybe a little bit more of a versatile ball handling skill set than maybe Owe will. And that's not to say he's a better player or even a better scorer. Definitely not. I just think that Owe does one thing really well, and I don't necessarily think that constitutes as being the point guard night in and night out. And at least in those specific circumstances, I think that makes a lot of sense. So Aberdeen has played well in this spot before. You've got guys on this roster that can look good around him. I think that it is pretty clear he needs to be Kentucky's point guard and the primary guy there. Watch this space with how Kentucky wants to work things around him. Again, like I mentioned, the bigs are going to get involved. A lot of guys are going to get involved passing the rock. If they're going to, I think they are going to make that kind of the thing here where everyone gets a little bit involved. But I really do think you make Denzel be the primary guy here and everybody kind of works off of him. It's less about what Aberdeen can bring you and more about what he can do to set up a lot of other strengths of this offense. I think that that's where we sit. And then also something else that I think is good about Jaland Lowe being out. Obviously, him being hurt is not good. Him being out for this team is not good. But if we're looking at positives here potentially, Aberdeen, I think, is probably going to provide you a boost defensively, which is something that I think both this staff and the fans have to be excited about. This is a 6'5" guard, almost wing type at various points that can give you that defense 1 through 3. So I think this is going to be interesting for Kentucky. Like Pope said, they're going to experiment a little bit this Friday, and that's pretty clear. They are definitely going to have to try some things with Jaland Lowe out. So Aberdeen is my answer pretty definitively. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Does it need to be Aberdeen? Does it need to be him exclusively? Who else should get involved? Let me know in the comments below. All right. I want to talk about Andrija Jelavic and his role in this offense. It's pretty shrunk down. It's pretty simplified here for the Wildcats, and it's going to be, I think, specifically 2 different things. And because it's 2 different things, I think it gives us a pretty clear, definitive answer as to where some other possible strengths offensively are going to lie. Kentucky may be not as versatile at some certain spots as maybe they currently expect to. Let's talk about that here in just a second. Before we do it, though, tell you guys about our friends over at Monarch Money. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what exactly they're worth. Whether it's 401ks, savings, investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. It's helped me organize all of my accounts, track my spending, and get a better handle on my investments without having to ever touch a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if they win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many different ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football honestly really more exciting whenever I got a little something riding on the action, whether it be me keeping tabs on my fantasy lineup or maybe keeping tabs on the Wildcats over the weekend. It kind of keeps me engaged 24/7 over the weekend. Whether you're a casual fan or you really like diving to the stats like I do, FanDuel makes the game day experience just so much better for everybody. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Pause here for water as we move along. So we talked about Denzel Aberdeen, about how I think he needs to be Kentucky's point guard and needs to be the primary answer here for the Wildcats. Let's talk about the role of another player on this team, because to be honest with you, after hearing what Pope had to say about him, it kind of changes a little bit of my opinion about, what Kentucky's going to be doing at the 4. And then also, what exactly Kentucky's post presences look like this season. Really, I didn't think it was going to be a big part of this offense to begin with, but now it just kind of confirms you've got 2 options. And right now, technically, you've got 1. So here's a quote from Mark Pope. I believe this was during it might have been during some speaking event. I'm not entirely sure. But you can go find this on Twitter if you want to go find the video. I'm sure a lot of other people have written articles about the quote as well. But he said, when asked about, different options for Kentucky as far as point guard goes, he said, Colin Chandler is going to be a formidable force. Otega is convinced that he is the answer for us at the point, as well as all of our bigs. Malachi Marino watched Amari Williams last year, and he says that's what I should be doing. Brandon Garrison wants to step in those shoes. Andrija knows he's not allowed to dribble. He's only allowed to shoot. He's probably the only guy not vying for the point guard position right now, as a backup right now. Really interesting to call out Andrija Jelavic as the only player who's not going to be distributing the ball at all. Kind of weird, right? Especially knowing, how this offense operates with their 4s and their 5s involved, what they do with these guys off the dribble, or what they did with Andrew Carr at various points last year. It's very interesting, that quote there. He's not allowed to dribble. He's only allowed to shoot. So Jelavic, I think, when you think about him with Eurobasket in Croatia, I believe that's where he was playing. When you think about what Kentucky needs out of their 4 spot this year, I do find it interesting that he's not going to be allowed to really he's not going to be allowed to put the ball on the deck. And I think that eliminates any face-up game that we could have possibly, expected out of Jelavic, any post game that we could have expected out of him, because he's not going to be putting the ball on the floor in post-up situations, even though that was an aspect of his game overseas. So you're not going to see any sort of dribbling out of him, just catch and shoot stuff. Really interesting that that's what they're limiting Jelavic to. And it kind of makes it, I guess, a little bit more of a difficult scout is the thing that I'm concerned about. Or, a little bit of an easier scout, I should say. Because of the completely contrasting styles of play between Andrija and Mo Diabate at the 4. You've got a bruiser type who's going to put the ball on the floor, who's going to drive to the rim, finish through contact, bully ball, rebounding wise, hard-nosed defensively, maybe a little undersized for the position that he's going to be playing, maybe. And then you've got Jelavic, who is more finesse, exclusively catch and shoot type stuff, rigid in the way that he's going to play offensively, not known entirely for his defense or his ability to be a rebounder. Might make Kentucky a little bit easier to scout here as far as what they want to do rotationally with these two guys at the 4. So maybe that's a little bit of a concern. And then also, I think that this, in Jelavic's current state, just based on the scouting reports and based on what's coming out of practice, this is probably the best thing for him to be told, hey, don't put the ball on the floor. You're going to shoot it or you're going to give it up. But I also think that it confirms, again, that Kentucky's post presences, and they had one with Amari Williams last year, and then they had another at various spots with Brandon Garrison, and then they definitely had one with Andrew Carr. So they had 3 different guys that they could ask, hey, go post up, go put the ball on the floor, and make a play even late in the shot clock. This confirms Kentucky's options are limited there. There is no Amari Williams on this team. Brandon Garrison is still here, but there's no Andrew Carr. Andrija Jelavic is not Andrew Carr this season. Jaden Quaintance, we'll see what he is as a post player in this offense whenever he's out there, but he's not out there. Like I mentioned earlier, Kentucky's really only just got one, and he was not the most efficient player around the rim last year. Brandon Garrison was not. So a little concerning that Kentucky doesn't have that high efficiency post player that they can go to. That might end up being a problem in some of these big time non-con matchups, because it's kind of what bailed them out at various points last year. That Carr could just go to work against Duke or Gonzaga. So this is interesting that Jelavic is going to have his role kind of shrunk even further past what we expected, because his coaches are telling him, do not put the ball on the floor. You are only allowed to shoot. Again, that might end up being a good thing, and it's probably okay for him right now because where he's at development wise, but man, a little concerning, just a little bit. But overall, I'm not that worried. Just something that I think is very interesting to note, because you don't just flippantly say that in a quote. I think there's a little bit more to dig into there. So let me know what you guys think. Interesting news from Mark Pope about Andrija Jelavic. I want to talk a little bit about Jon Sumrall, about Kentucky, about the football program, about kind of where they're heading right now. I spoke about it a lot yesterday, and obviously, no duh, it's not good right now. And frankly, I don't see it getting any better this year because there's not going to be a ton of opportunities to turn it around. So let's talk about it in just a second. Before we do it, though, tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. College football is back. I know the Wildcats aren't that great right now, but the sport as a whole, you guys know I'm an enthusiast of it. I love it. It's the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just really nothing like it out there. Let's be real, though. If you want to get tickets to go see your favorite team, Kentucky, or maybe you want to go see somebody else, it can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. It's endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout, and that's why I use Game Time. It's the app that actually gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I have talked about quite a bit, actually, on the show already. Every single Kentucky event that I've been to, I've used Game Time. In fact, I've actually got tickets to go see the Wildcats play Gonzaga in Nashville later this year, and I could go ahead and tell you the prices were incredible. It was super quick, easy to get in, get out the app, get your tickets. You get to see views from your seats, and they're even better than in person. That's not a bit. I promise you they will be. They've got zone deals where you can pick the section, they pick the seats, and you save big. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than literally any other way that I bought tickets ever for anything. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time by downloading the Game Time app, creating an account, using code LOCKEDONCollege. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Pause one more time for water. because I am perpetually thirsty. That does not. My thirst knows no end. Please, nobody clip that. If Kentucky wants Jon Sumrall, the former coach, played here. You've got a lot of ties here to Lexington if you're Jon Sumrall. Just a little bit of information. If you want him, Kentucky, you're going to need to make a decision on your current head coach sooner rather than later. I don't claim to be an insider. I don't claim to tell you what's going on behind the scenes in Lexington. I'm not going to tell you verbatim what exactly Kentucky's running in practice, whether that be on the football field, the basketball court, the volleyball court, women's basketball with Kenny Brooks, who's killing it right now. Super excited to see where they go this season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you day in and day out, I know exactly what's going on. I make it pretty clear on this show. I'm not an insider. If you want to go get that information, pay for it or find it on Twitter. But here's what I will tell you. This is what I do know right now. Jon Sumrall, and this has been widely speculated. This is not breaking news to anybody. Jon Sumrall and his agent are knocking on doors right now. No duh. They were last cycle. They're going to do it again this time. There are other schools, specifically in this conference, the SEC, that are going to make moves, some of them already have, faster than Kentucky will, with Mark Stoops and Sumrall. If they want to get the former guy back in, they need to make this decision very soon, because there are other teams, again, trying to be as plain as I possibly can. There are other teams in the SEC, multiple of them, who have already made steps. And let's say Kentucky doesn't want Jon Sumrall, or Sumrall wants to go elsewhere. That's fine. That's fine. But if you do, Kentucky, if you do really want to get your guy in here again, somebody that will come in here and put the program, or excuse me, I guess, restore competence to the program at the very least. Maybe it's not going to be winning a ton of games immediately, but at least it's going to be much more competent. If you want that, you got to go ahead and start pulling some triggers right now. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in this offseason, in this cycle, with some big time players who may want to take a crack at Sumrall. I mean, think about it already. Arkansas, Florida, Penn State, UCLA, just to name some, okay? Some that are probably going to come open or might come open. Auburn, Florida State is going to come open by the end of the year, if not in the next couple of weeks. Auburn is going to come open by the end of the year, if not in the next couple of weeks. LSU might come open. There's going to be a lot of moving and shuffling, and even if some of those high-profile programs don't say, well, let me just take a little bit of Jon Sumrall here and see how it works. If LSU comes calling, they're not. Let's say they don't. They're going to take somebody that's high on some of these other mid-tier programs lists, and then those mid-tier programs are going to say, yes, looks like we've got to go get Jon Sumrall. And that's going to leave Kentucky pulling some defensive coordinator or something from some okay school, and then you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some problems. So if you want the guy that could possibly turn things around right now, you got to go and get him as soon as possible. Will Stein, by the way, that's not who I'm talking about here. Will Stein would not be a horrible choice. I think Stein would be great. Does he want to come here? I don't know, but we'll see. If you want him, you got to go and get him right now. That's all I'm trying to tell you. I'm not an insider, but Kentucky's got to make some decisions sooner rather than later, I think. And even if it's not Sumrall, I think they have to pull this trigger quick, because it's about to get ugly. It is about to get ugly in the college football coaching search market. Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. Follow me on Twitter at Lance_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And of course, God bless.